I'd like to call this joint council finance committee special meeting to order. Brendan?
I'd like to call the finance committee special meeting to order with the council.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mayor Donald Hewish,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tempore Margaret Morales, present. Councilmember Jose Montaño,
Here.
Councilmember Dania Acosta, Councilmember Ray Shelton,
Here.
Councilmember Michael Valdenegro, Councilmember Richard Acosta,
Present.
City Manager Ana Urquijo,
Present.
City Attorney Tina Vanucci,
Present.
City Treasurer Luis Pedrosa.
Present.
Thank you. And for the record, Mr. Mayor, council members Dania Acosta and Michael Valdenegro are excused.
Thank you very much. Mr. Lee?
And thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to call the roll, please, for the finance committee.
Mr. Mitch Lindeman,
Here.
Mr. Ivan Bridge,
Here.
Mr. Pete Cordova,
Here.
Mr. Alejandro Martinez, Vice President,
Here.
and Minister Lisa Washington is excused, and Ms. Alice Romeo is unexcused.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 5, persons wishing to address the council or finance committee in writing or verbally on any item not on the agenda. Sandra, please. Thank you. We have Miss Susan Ann Kramer, please.
Good evening, members of the council. My name is Susan Ann Kramer. I live at 1250 East 9th Street, Douglas, Arizona. I've been there since 1985. I just wanted to thank the city and the council. Douglas Days was fantastic. And the city Parks and Rec and the I don't remember the people who put everything up, the workers, they deserve a lot of praise. The bathrooms were good all weekend. And they were very helpful. The Chamber of Commerce was putting on the beer garden, and they helped us set everything up and put chairs out and tables and things like that for us. They kept the area clean. I've never seen the trash cans emptied so often. But I just thought that you all needed to know that you put on a great event. Jennifer did a good job, and whoever works with her, the parks people. And you guys don't hear that enough. So I just thought I would let you know. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kramer. Item number 6, I apologize, Finance Committee, but we have an agenda item for the council to take action on. As you'll see, it's dealing with Chino Road, and so whatever we can move that project along, we're gonna do it. So that's why we snuck it in there. So item number 6, discussion decision on item A, resolution number 24-1602. A resolution of the mayor and council of the city of Douglas, Cochise County, Arizona, authorizing the execution of an intergovernmental agreement between the city of Douglas and the state of Arizona, acting by and through its Department of Transportation for design and road construction to realign Chino Road to intersect with State Route 80 and US Highway 191, to be funded through combined federal and local funds in the amount that is estimated to be $253,353, design, and $5,090,241 construction. Local match is estimated to be $14,441 for design and $290,241 for construction. Ms. Moore, please.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council. I really appreciate your taking this agenda item. As you know, we've been working for years to get Chino Road realigned, in addition to trying to fix aspects of Chino Road. This has been on the Southeastern Arizona transportation list for years. We did get some congressionally directed spending, and we've now got ADOT ready to go to help us to get the design going and then construction. And there's some time limits on it. They gave us a quick turnaround on this, so I do appreciate your considering this item this evening. This is for the realignment of the road, not for some of the repairs on the southern end that we're still working on. But this is a necessary step, and we did get some great help from our congressional partners getting funding for this. So we really appreciate that, as well as from our local transportation funds to help pay for this improvements. And what ADOT will be doing for us is they will be managing, to let you know how long this has been sitting. You guys had complete plans back in 2014. And now we're in 2024, and the plans that were completed at that time now need to be updated. And so ADOT's going to update those plans and then get us under construction, and they're going to help manage that project for it. So with that, I'll take any questions you might have.
Thank you. May I have a motion regarding the resolution?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Mr. Shelton, please.
I move that the mayor and council approve resolution number 24-1602.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Shelton, second by Mr. Acosta to approve resolution number 24-1602. Any questions or comments? Other than a hallelujah? Thank you. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Montaño,
Yes.
Councilmember Shelton,
Yes.
Councilmember Richard Acosta,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Morales. Yes. Mr. Mayor.
Yes, motion carries. Item number 7, presentation discussion. Item A, budget presentation for fiscal year 2024, 2025. Mrs. Wakiko, please.
Thank you, Mayor, Mr. Chair, members of council, members of our finance committee. We will jump right into this. It's quite an extensive. Do we have, you need the clicker, okay. Quite an extensive summary of our proposed budget, but we are going to tag team as we have in past years. The budget committee is stepping forward to help with the slides. I did send my memo before the weekend. I'm happy to submit a third budget as city manager as a balanced budget, and we have many items to review. You will have plenty of opportunity to ask questions. You don't have to make any recommendations at this meeting. This is strictly for your purpose to go through a thorough review of our recommendations. And we will come back. We have a schedule for follow-up where we will ask for recommendations at those follow-up meetings. Staff and I will remain available between meetings to meet with anyone that has specific questions or needs a little more one-on-one time to go over certain measures. We're happy to do that within our schedules. So we'll just jump right in, and I'll turn it over to our finance director to get us going. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Mr. Chairman, members of the finance committee. Again, bear with us. It's a lot of information. Stop me or stop any of the presenters if you have questions at any point. So we start with our general government cash balance of 23,183,155. Finance committee is very familiar with this format. We have out of that what our restricted cash is, the Alex Black Fund, police restricted funds, court fines, officer equipment, the capital carryover, and of course our PSPRS bond reserve. Our total restricted cash is 7.9 million. So we take that, and then we also have our policy reserves, our 45-day operating reserve, our capital reserve, and our debt reserve for a total of $7 million. So if you take the 23 million minus the 7.9 minus the 7 million policy reserves, that's where you arrive at almost $8.2 million as our fund balance. From there, we have our floor of 2.5 million. So that leaves us with almost 5.7 million that can be invested into capital projects. So that's where we stand cash wise.
Mr. Martinez, if I can jump in
Yes.
with a question. This may be premature, but I was also seeing that Tucson is in their budget capacity right now. And they're saying that they are being hit and will be in future years because of the 2.5 flat tax. So I wondered, no, it might be too early to ask that question, but how is that affecting us?
Correct. As we move along, we'll talk about the projected revenues and we'll definitely touch on shared revenues.
Thank you.
And that is definitely a concern. Just an overview, our sales tax is 19% or 1 million over budget projections as of March 2024. Sales tax is 12% above last year, actual collections as of the same time period. Our year-to-date expenditures are 10% below projections. And we are projecting we'll finish the fiscal year, which is fiscal year 24, with a $2 million surplus. The graphs on the right talk about our sales tax collection comparison. Same numbers, 19% over budget projections, 12% over last year. I'll just zip through this because I think we've already talked about this slide. This is where how our government operates, our local government here at the city of Douglas. We have our general fund that funds public safety, public works, parks and rec, administration, and other functions of government. And that is funded through taxes, their shared revenue, user fees, license and permits, and things of that nature. And then we have our special revenue, which is our HERF, transit, RICO, capital projects, and debt. And those are funds designated by law for a specific use. And those are funded through gas tax, obviously grants, RICO, seizures, capital, and debt. We have our enterprise funds. These are funds we operate pretty much like a business. And those are our water, sewer, sanitation, business type activities that are self-sustaining through the operational revenue. Where does the money come from? From user fees or user revenue, in this case, water, sewer, and the sanitation that we charge to people. And then we have the one internal service revenue fund, which is our self-funded insurance. And that is used to charge the cost of individual activities to individual funds, specifically for health insurance for our employees. And these are charges that we make to every fund and every department. Mr. Lindeman, or Chair Lindeman, here's the answer to your question. So we don't have final state revenue estimations yet. I was just in a call this morning with the league, and they're not going to convene this week. So we know that we're not going to hear anything this week. There's a lot of silence from the state government and the state legislators, which is unusual for this time of the year. So who knows if you know more than if you know something that I don't, please share. However, we do have some numbers to share. Our sales tax, excuse me, we are estimating we'll from the state shared revenues, we'll get almost 2.4 million, and that's about $103,000 up from last year. It's a number that has been given to us by the league. It is an estimation, and it's not a final number yet. Our income tax, this is where the flat tax comes into play. It's at 3.3 million. That's $783,000 less than last year, and that is a final number. And our VLT, which is our vehicle license tax, they're estimating we'll receive $983,300, which is about $26,000 less than last year, and that is not a final number. We are estimating that we'll generate $11 million in local sales tax. We are being more aggressive this year in our estimations. That's $1.4 million over last year's projections based on our current trend. Another source of revenue will be the sale of the land surrounding the airport, which will be reinvested into airport improvements. And that sale is still pending, and we are hopeful that we'll close this next fiscal year. We're also estimating $1 million in investment earnings from the money that we have invested in primarily in the pool, in the state pool. And that is an increase of 600,000 from last year. We're on pace to finish the year with about 1.5 million just this year in investment earnings. Some new grants that we are hopeful to get, and some that we have already been awarded. As a ballpark, as a whole number, $33 million in awarded grants, 22.1 million for applied that we have applied for other grants, and about 29, almost 30 million in pending submissions of grants is what we're estimating. We're also budgeting $1.1 million in matching funds. Some of the key grants that we are pending to hear from is a $25 million raise grant. This is for paving projects primarily on commercial routes. We have been awarded the 8.1 million from ADOT for the connector road, and $9.5 million in congressional directed spending for 6 projects that we've been carrying over from last year, one of them being the Chino Road. As we continue to talk about revenue for this next fiscal year, we have the marijuana, the legalization of marijuana, 16% sales tax that is shared with with the entire state. We are projecting we're going to get the same $130,000, which will be spent in police and fire training. So that's as far as revenues is concerned. As just highlights and changes in expenditures. While overall general fund expenditures show a decrease of almost 22%, and this is mainly due to the payoff of La Perilla Apartments that we closed on this fiscal year, the removal of $1 million proceeds to the golf course, and also the removal of ARPA funds as new revenue. Departments overall experience an average increase of 13% in overall expenditures. Our core allocation agreement increased by almost $50,000 or 24% over last year. This is our agreement to operate the courts. Again, increases in most departments' divisions are due to inflation impacting fuel, utilities, and overall operating material costs. We're also budgeting a subsidy into our transit fund of $214,000. That is substantial. We also have an increase in uniform allowance for field staff from $350 to $450, and police sworn personnel from $760 to $1,000, for a total cost of $14,680 for both. With that, I'll shift the presentation to Ms. Garcia Pedrosa, who will talk about some of the HR related changes.
Good evening, Mayor and Council and members of the Finance Committee. Okay, so for our personnel, we are in year 3, or we're going to go into year 3 of our CMR, the Classification Maintenance Review Plan. If you recall, the plan is to have all of our positions within 5% below, not below market. And so what we're trying to do is get there. But what we've discovered is that as the 3-year progress, then we sometimes fall behind in certain positions. Last year you saw that we had to bring back for police officer and dispatcher. And there's a few classifications that we're also bringing back for an additional change from what the original year 3 showed. And that the cost for year 3 is $228,000. That also includes the revision to some of our positions as the maintenance worker, the laborers, that we don't want the minimum wage to be so close to the beginning of the range for them. So we're trying to avoid that compression with minimum wage, and that's included in the $328,000. If you saw in the budget memo, attachment 2 had all the positions listed, and it had all the changes to the ranges that we're going to make. It showed what the original plan was for year 3. And if there were any additional changes, those were highlighted for you in either yellow or green. And the additional costs for those unique positions that had fallen more than either 10% below market. And there's also some positions that we are doing because of certain responsibility or certifications that those positions are needing. And also for internal equity, that's a cost of $92,000. We're including in this budget also a one-time bonus, as we did for the current year, of $1,000 for each employee, prorated based on how long they've been working and the number of hours. And that equates to a cost of $200,000. We do expect, again, for the minimum wage to increase in January of next year. How it's looking right now, because they look at the CPI for the nation, and they look in August for the last 12 months, just at the minimum wage, and we're looking at least, I would say, a 3% increase, so that translates into $14.80. Currently, the minimum wage is $14.35. Another of the highlights for staffing for us this year is that this current fiscal year, we budgeted 12 limited status positions and 2 permanent positions that hadn't been funded before, but we funded them this year. But all of those, we only funded for half the year. So now, of course, we're having to fund for the full year, and that translates into a cost of $232,000. We're also doing or recommending an increase for our paramedic stipend from $1.34 per hour to $2 per hour. If you saw in the memo, our paramedics have been with that stipend of $1.34 since the 90s. I don't have the exact date, but we know that it was done in the 90s. So it's been quite a few years, and we looked around the state or those that we compare ourselves to, and it is around $2.15 or $3. We do know that some are below what we have. BSB is at $1, but we do want to be higher than that. We're also including some temporary annexation aids to assist with the plan that we have for this year. And it's just some temporary help to assist our annexation assistance. We now have the self-funded insurance for health insurance. We're happy to report that we've been doing good. So we want to remain with the same rates that we currently have. So it'll be a flat year for us. So it'll be a 0% increase for the employer and the employee.
May I ask a
Yes.
question on the health insurance? Is there a carryover for our savings? We have a savings from year to year?
Yes, currently we have a fund of 1.6 in reserve, which is going to help us in case we have bad years, that we have some high or shock claims that we can do that. We can pay for those through that reserve. It can only be used, of course, for anything that is related to health.
Thank you.
And I'll turn it over to our IT manager to review our capital.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council, Finance Committee members. Well, if you see on the slide, I don't know if you got the opportunity to look through the budget memo. You got a link and you'll be able to see this online. Then it's, we're using a Power BI analytic tool to be able to review the current fiscal year with the capital projects. We had a total of 61 projects. Then 47 were completed and we spent 3.1 million. And then we had 14 carryovers. These carryovers, the majority, they're related for not having enough funding for be completed this year. Then we're gonna just move it for next fiscal to complete those, you know. I think so in this one, I don't know, I recommend all of you have opportunity to go and click on the Power BI link, and that way you'll be able to see a more dynamic that.
Mr. Camacho, can you scroll down the bar on the right to show how it moves down to see the full list? Oh, you have to do it here. So these are all shown in, can you get in there? And that's fine, but I wanted to make sure that when you go into your link on your memo, this bar, you can scroll it down to see all of your items, balances or carries. A little more to the right.
Here, for example, you got here this, and for example, here it says focus. You click on it, you'll be able to see the entire list and more in detail, and I mean, obviously it's gonna be bigger, you know? With the detail of every single report, project. Then if you scroll down, I'm sorry. If you scroll down here, you'll be able to see all the projects were completed in this case, well, I think so move. One. Let me go back. Yeah. Then you'll be able to see here, for example, the one they're gonna do a carryover, they're gonna be here, and then you can scroll and check. Okay.
So it allows you to look through based on what you'd like to sort through or what you'd like to click on, and it gives you kind of our real-time look at each of those specific items, so.
Yeah, for example, in the new fiscal year, we'll be able to have that options here. You got the source, you know, it's gonna be these three ones. For example, if we go to new capital, we click on it, and you'll be able to see how automatically the dynamic appears the project we're recommending to be approved. If you're gonna be on site, we got 6 different types. Is that analytics, equipment, facilities, infrastructure, miscellaneous, and vehicles. Then, for example, we go to facilities, facilities. You'll be able to use it. I'm gonna use it in here.
You can try any of the others,
Yeah.
but it's meant to, so the good thing about the link is he can go in behind the scenes and correct what it's doing now. And, you know, you can keep using that link to sort through all of the different vehicle requests, miscellaneous items, the infrastructure related, or you can just look at new capital altogether and scroll down the side here to see what the requests were.
Yeah, and the way it works is just click on it and double click on the check and uncheck, just click again. Then, and these, for this, new fiscal year 24-25 is there were, request 95 projects. We're recommending 51.
Questions on capital? Again, lots to go through and look at based on, you know, your preference on items, and we remain available to answer any questions. Just kind of wanted to go give you a tutorial on how to maneuver through these dynamic links in your documents. Thank you. Are there other items?
I'm gonna pass it to.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, members of council, Finance Committee members. I'll be presenting the enterprise funds highlights. We'll get started with the water. On the revenue side of things, we're projecting 23% increase due to the rate adjustment or the program rate adjustments. We would be entering year 4 of 5. That would take effect in February 2025. So taking that into account, along with increase in investment earnings and some grant opportunities, accounts for the 23%. If you just include our user revenue, it would equate to 7% increase. On the capital side, recommending to use its fund balance for capital projects. We continue to work with Well 14 Rehab and working a USDA grant for that. If awarded, our matching component would be $192,000. So we're projecting for that to be coming out of fund balance. Our SCADA system, again, we received a couple of grants for that, a congressional directed spending grant and a WIFA grant. So we have an expected match amount for those grants as well, $432,429. 2 booster pump generators, an automatic flush system, and booster pumps for the Alegre area, which is in the east side of town. Round up the capital amounts. Or actually, there's more capital. We also have these are more small capital requests, steel metal plates for trenches. We have the well chlorination system for well 15, the booster station relief and check valves. Very expensive check valves. We have 2 of those for $10,000. We're also looking at the utility billing office to replace the countertops. That's one of the carryovers that we have. And we're also recommending a new payment kiosk to be available 24/7 for payments to be accepted for this for payments. 5,700 represents one of the funds. So they're sharing it amongst the 3 funds. So it's about close to around $17,000 for that kiosk. We are also wanting to highlight the port of entry related grants. We are budgeting this year, we project about $2 million to be utilized for out of the 8.9 million of state ARPA funds to continue the 60% design for the water and sewer projects. The NADBank funding, $367,500 to continue the preliminary engineering and environmental study for that project. Other grants requests, I mentioned the USDA grant for the Well 14 rehab and arsenic treatment facilities, 1.7 million. The $588,000, that represents forgivable principal, and 1.44 is the loan component for the new well that would be for in town. 2.13 million for the WIFA water conservation grant. That's the one for the SCADA system and the CDS grant combined. So those are 2 different grants. We also, WIFA just made available a new fund directed at rural communities as well. This one is directed for water systems that need to increase capacity. So we know we have those needs and we're gonna certainly seek those monies. We project about $1.1 million for the Geronimo Trail transmission line and the reservoir roof is what we're projecting at this point, but that can certainly change. And that one, it can be full grant or there could be some components. It just depends on your scoring for your grant. Looking at the sewer fund, another revenue increase projected at 20%, also due to the program rate increases. 12% if you only consider the rate adjustments, but 20% if you consider the impact fees and investment earnings. Capital, we're looking at $806,000 approved in capital out of also their fund balance. Notable purchases include the purchase of a new vacuum truck at $600,000. And that's a replacement, and $40,000 for a new prefab administrative building for the sewer department at the wastewater treatment plant location.
Mr. Goza, if I may have a
Sure.
question here.
Yes,
Is that the purchase of the new vacuum truck outright, or is there an idea about refinancing or financing that purchase?
this is an outright purchase utilizing their fund balance to fund that. So we are not recommending a lease at this time.
Okay.
Regarding grants, same for sewer, 2 million being budgeted out of the 8.9 million total state ARPA funds for the POE service area. We're also just finishing the wastewater treatment flood mitigation study from NADBank. That's to get the wastewater treatment plant out of the flood zone. We're in the study portion of that, and that's again a grant funded by the NADBank. On the sanitation side, pretty much we are looking at the capital side. It's just a small capital that we're looking at replacement of just general replacement of our 96 and 300 gallon cans. Continue to wrap the metal building to cover the wash pad there for the trucks to be washed. And also our chipping station, which we've used to recycle just brush, large limbs and things like that. So we're continuing with that program next year. We are also including a rate study for sanitation. Sanitation does need to look at its rates again. The rates have not been looked at since 2011. So it's time to really start to look at those, and really the sanitation fund continues to be flat in the revenue side, but also the expenses continue to go higher. There's also more customers that we need to take care of, and the commercial side of things seems to be not really paying its way of the costs that are being incurred to pick those customers up. We know that, and we also want to look at where we are on the residential side of things. We're also looking to explore recycle and reuse programs, working with the county in conjunction with them. And we talked about the chipping station, about doing special programs for recycling. So we'll continue those initiatives, trying those out and exploring those throughout the year. Any questions on enterprise funds? Yes. Yes. I'll defer to Mr. Martinez. Do you know the increase on that? I think we were looking at around 5% increase.
No, the last 2 years are.
Yeah. So we programmed, we will look those up, but we programmed them. The first 3 years, it was around 2.5%, and the last 2 years, about 5% each year. I'll look those up and get that information.
So our special revenue funds, the first one is our HERF. This year's budget, we're recommending the acquisition of a new asphalt plant that we've been wanting to get for the last few years. The financing mechanism that we're proposing is a 10 to 11 year financing of that plant for about $3.5 million. That will also include a zipper machine and a loader to help with prepping streets for paving. This new plant will increase production capacity and will also make asphalt available for private purchases as well. It will again, it's a financing mechanism. At the 6/12 meeting, you will be entertaining the possibility of paying off our call center loan, and this will essentially replace that. So we wouldn't be getting into additional debt.
I have a quick question, if
Yes.
I may. Generally, are we still paying the financing of the ladder truck, or has that been taken care of?
Mr. Lindeman, that's paid off,
Okay,
and it's been paid off, I think, for 5 years.
oh, yes, okay, thank you.
This budget also proposes a capital request for the HERF fund of 732,000 in street improvements, 70,000 to be spent in street lights, and 40,000 to be spent in signage, to replace some of those old signs that we have around town. Yes, sir.
How about marking?
I believe that, correct. And I believe we've already started, yes, I was gonna defer to you because I know that you're working with the county on a project for that. I'm gonna defer it over to our city engineer.
Mayor's member of the Finance Committee, we've been working with Cochise County to get them to help us with striping. They did give us a cost estimate and said they would schedule us. They just haven't gotten back out here to actually do the striping. This is an arrangement we had many years in the past. The last couple of years, they've been less wanting to come into town, but they've been kind enough to come offer to do it again for us. Yes.
Thank you.
Some of the current fiscal year improvements that we've done through the HERF fund is the mill and overlay of Fifth Street that we all are enjoying. Repaired a 475-foot section of Washington and Huber drainage section. Chip sealed 9th Street, 21st Street, Airport Road, and made temporary repairs to Chino Road. And 3.1 miles of road repairs is what we've done this current fiscal year. Our golf course is carrying over $1.2 million into this budget to fund improvements and purchase equipment. We're also recommending a new 25 cart lease that that just expired, as a matter of fact. As directed by Mayor and Council, we are hiring an architect to provide recommendations for golf course improvements. And if I may, the 1.2 comes from the sale of La Perilla Apartments. That's the carryover where the money is coming from. We're also proposing an increase into the general fund subsidy to cover the cost of additional position of the golf superintendent for a total of $274,906. It includes that and other costs. The 274 is not just for the golf superintendent. But the total proposed general fund subsidy is almost $275,000. The proposed subsidy includes payments to the MPC to pay for salaries and benefits of the grounds employees the MPC will employ through the new agreement. The proposed new agreement for the MPC will propose that the city collects all revenues and pay all expenses except for payroll and payroll-related expenses that will remain with the MPC. This will ensure better cash control and reporting as recommended in the fiscal year 22-23 audit. There's also a project included in the AMRRP insurance, which will reduce our premium from $35,000 to about $5,000. So those are some of the highlights for our golf course. Yes. Correct. Ms. Urquijo?
Yes, Mayor, Mr. Chair, and Councilmember Shelton. This does include the RV park, not necessarily larger, but we are working on electrical upgrades and infrastructure improvements to that area. Absolutely. Restrooms as well.
Mr. Shelton wants them painted the same color, by the way.
This thing is really hot. Not just fail things hot.
Got it.
You're good.
Noted.
So our revenue fund, and you can see there are newly renovated runway. We are projecting a little bit over 2 million proceeds from or revenue from the sale of the land around the airport that should be completed this next fiscal year. The proceeds as directed by Mayor and Council will be used for airport improvements. There's also $18,500 in rent from the border wall contractor. We are not using or budgeting that because we expect the sale to be completed sooner rather than later. Some of the highlights for our airport, Saving America's Treasures grant of $750,000 that requires a one-to-one match. We're also proposing upgrade to Jet A fueling facilities to automated dispensers for fuel.
Will this include the Air Museum, which we desperately need another A-plus museum?
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Chair, and Councilmember Shelton, yes, this may include any improvements to the Border Air Museum, but I want to point out that specifically the Saving Americans Treasure is a big success in this current fiscal year, that we were able to acquire funds for the restoration of the historic hangar. So that, in addition to all of the other capital improvements that we have for the airport, that could very well include, we've not outlined specifically what we need at the Border Air Museum, other than conceptual discussions with staff on more technology-driven type of presentation tools.
Continuing with our grant fund. We're also projecting $400,000 ADOT grant for perimeter fencing phase 3 and the revised airport layout plan. We have requested $863,189 from ADOT grant for runway rehabilitation. That's already been completed, so that's more of a highlight to cover additional costs incurred. So just as a point of clarification, we are requesting the additional work that was done, or the additional cost incurred in the airport runway work that was done. Again, as Ms. Urquijo mentioned, we've been awarded the Saving America's Treasure Restoration Grant for $750,000 that will be used to rehabilitate the historic larger hangar.
If I may interject, you know, on the America's Treasures Restoration Grant, did I see in the previous slide that that was a one-to-one match?
That is correct.
Does that mean we have to pay $750,000 to get $750,000?
So Mr. Lindeman, if we spend less than that, we just have to match one-to-one. If we spend 500,000, then we would have to match 500,000. So it's up to basically $1.5 million. We spend less than that, we just have to match half of it.
It seems kind of silly to me, because if you spend the money, then they just give it back to you. Is that how that works? How's that work?
No, for every dollar that is spent, we have to pay 50 cents of that for the project. So basically, every dollar, we get reimbursed half of that back. We pay out the dollar and get reimbursed 50 cents.
Oh, all right.
Yeah.
Thank you for the clarification.
Sure.
Our transit grant, our transit fund, we're in year 2 of the FDA ADOT grant that's used for operations and administration. We have been awarded $935,363, which is $46,000 less than we actually requested. We're applying for Freeport and Legacy grants for Cochise Connection and the application enhancement. Some of the highlights for the transit grant, we're projecting the same revenue from transit fares at around $55,000 for the entire year. This year, the budget that we are recommending is considering a subsidy from the general fund of $214,156. Subsidy is primarily due to the loss of the call center partnership revenue. The Freeport grant that we did not receive, a reduction in the Seago annual grant, and just overall increase in personnel and operating costs of the transit. Any questions on transit? So these are some of the outside funding requests these are organizations that have come to the city and asking for money for a grant, in other words. The Rotary Club is requesting $2,000. That is to pick or restart their fly-in sponsorship program. Apacheria gravel race, they're requested more than that, and we are recommending $2,500 funding. That is a new bike race event. University South Foundation is requesting $2,000 for scholarships. Dark is making two requests, one's for the senior citizens, $1,800 for arts and craft supplies and bingo prizes. And also $15,000 for fuel and utilities for their Meals on Wheels program. We're also saving $4,500 for to be determined in case another nonprofit organization or organization in our community comes to the city for funding once we've approved the budget during the fiscal year. So the total outside funding requests are $27,800, and that's the recommendation.
Of the 15,000 is the, how much did they get last year?
Yes.
Same? It was 13?
Yes.
Okay, oh, that's good. Yeah. Okay.
In the packets that you'll get tomorrow with the budget sheets, you'll also get the individual applications from these organizations as well for you to review. And then
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Chair, if I can also clarify on these funding requests as presented in the table of my memo on page 13, you can see the actual amount recommended and the amount requested. So I would just clarify that for amount requested total was 38,800 and the staff is recommending 27,800, which is flat and matches the contribution mayor and council decided on for the previous fiscal year. So again, all of these are always up to mayor and council, and we just came back with an amount that kept flat. But we did have one of these requesters come in at a very, very high amount. So I want to make sure that you reference that change, and that is available in my memo on page 13.
Thank you.
so what is still pending is our overall cost for liability insurance, which we don't know yet. And as stated before, our final state share revenue numbers, which hopefully will come in the next couple of weeks. Some of the next steps, as I mentioned before, tomorrow you'll get the budget sheets along with some other information that for you to review and consider. On June 4th, we're having our finance committee meeting. This is the meeting where the finance committee convenes, goes over the budget and makes recommendations to mayor and council. The next day, the June 4th meeting is at 12 noon, which is next Tuesday. And then on Wednesday afternoon, mayor and council will convene again for a work session. This is sort of our second review of today's proposed budget for fiscal year 25. It's another opportunity for you to ask questions and or make recommendations. By then, you will have recommendations from the finance committee from the day before. So again, this is for you to consider that. And on June 12th, which is at the regular meeting, mayor and council, you will be considering the tentative adoption for fiscal year 25's budget. After that, there's a legal process that needs to take place, and we are projecting that on the July 10th regular meeting, there will be a hearing and then the final budget adoption for fiscal year 25. So that's your next steps and timeline of things to come.
Thank you, Mr. Martinez. Any questions or comments from anyone?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to add a few points also. The July 10th date is a special meeting. We are required to handle that action during a special meeting outside of the regular meeting. And also I want to make sure that as attachments to my memorandum, attachment 3A has a full listing of the capital improvement program in case you have a difficult time going through the links and the dynamic areas. We did a print of the actual schedule that has not only the carryover amounts, but of the current asks, all of the amounts requested and those recommended. Again, we always have more needs than we do have resources, so we did our best working with all departments to provide priority recommendations for all capital needs.
Mr. Kiko, could I ask you also to discuss briefly, because we have two new council members regarding your budget team and how you go about developing that?
Yes, thank you, Mayor, Mr. Chair, and members of our council and committee. I have a budget team. Kudos to them. They've been working alongside me for months now. And this is the third year. We've handled things a little different each year. We basically put out a philosophy at maybe early springtime on saying what we think is coming and how departments should focus their requests and from what lens. We really have been working on a lens of sustainability, alignment, and efficiencies for the 3 years because we don't know what's coming. After COVID, we had some good years and we're just kind of waiting for that to either plateau or dip again. And we have to, although that hasn't happened, we remain very conservative in all of our recommendations because if that occurs again, we want to make sure we've created strategies to be able to weather that type of storm. So everything is always looked at. Obviously, with inflation this year, as you heard, we had a 13% general increase on average across all department, and that's fuel costs and utility increases, among other needs that we have from a systems issue related areas. So we have to accommodate those, and that produces for us really using up any remaining balances that we have sustainably on the revenues that are coming in. So that then reduces for us the amount of revenue that we have to allocate towards capital one-time costs. So there's been a couple of things we do with respect to capital. And so everybody comes in with a request. This year, we actually had some pre-budget meetings to look very, very thoroughly at two things: overtime and recurring capital needs. I wanted to make sure we separate the one-time capital needs from those that we have to, the HVAC systems, the roofs, the Ramada roofs, the things that if we don't get to, they just don't look very good out in the community. So we wanted to separate what that looked like, because if they're taken care of now, they're good for 13, 14, maybe even 20 years, depending on the systems. And while we have some of that capital allowance, I want to be able to take care of those types of issues. So then we can deal with a one-time capital purchase for a piece of equipment or more equipment. And that's really just looking at the life of our facilities and our assets, and then really trying to understand what we're doing on overtime and why, and trying to instill within our directors the ability to be more flexible, or not even asking for cuts in overtime. I just wanted to have the direct conversation that they are making a connection to know why they have the overtime. And if they're able to share in a meeting why that overtime is there, then I know that they are gauging it and they're working through of some type of a process or thought process on how they're approving that. So that gave us, I think, a couple of things. It made us aware of some areas where we think we can be more flexible, and be more thoughtful in scheduling, and also trying to look at some of those longer term capital needs that will take care of our issues now, but not come back in the next decade in case we do continue the ebb and flow of uncertainty with our economy. So the meetings, I think, have been occurring since early March, and it's been a long, long way, but we were able to come back with a balanced budget. It's very difficult because we're not only balancing the general fund, we're balancing enterprise funds within their own revenues. But at the same time, because we have employees across the board trying to be consistent with things like salaries and benefits across the board, you can't have a different pay scale in an enterprise fund because they do better over another enterprise fund. So those are some of the challenges. Also, we would like in the future to get to a point where we can sustainably include revenue for capital and not have to work on our reserve, so to speak, because right now we balance everything. We see what we need for personnel, for operations. I always keep that $2.5 million floor for emergencies, even beyond our very conservative emergency pots of money. I just feel that that's necessary for the unknowns, especially with so many policy priorities in our midst, moving forward with commercial ports of entry and huge types of projects. So after that, then what we have left is what we try and apply to capital needs. And now looking at it from a different lens of what needs will help us just get ahead a full decade, and then what is something we can address in a phased approach. One big highlight for me was the ability to recommend paying off the debt service for the call center and replacing that with the asphalt plant. If you all remember last year at the very, very last hour, we received our state shared revenue numbers, and projections were 500,000 less than what we proposed in a balanced budget. So we had to make a last minute recommendation to offset that debt service to the asphalt plant. And this year we took a different approach so that we still do not know at the last hour if we'll have the same experience from the state shared revenue perspective, but we are prepared. We've created some reserve, not quite $500,000 worth, but we have prepared and solidified, I think, a good plan to not only finance the asphalt plant, but some of the major equipment that should come with that to allow us to really impact that policy priority of streets and roads that we've not been able to nibble too much into. And then also freeing for us the call center debt so that we can start working in the direction that council has directed to see the opportunities of potentially community center, boys and girls club, and those conversations are underway, but that just clearing the debt for that allows us to kind of have a clean slate as well. So I hope that gives you just a quick glimpse of what the committee has been working on. My committee members for the 3 years now are Mr. Pedrosa and Mr. Rodriguez from the finance areas, Mr. Camacho from the IT area, really helping drive through some of the technology improvements and efficiencies. And then Ms. Garcia Pedrosa from the HR perspective on all employee-related everything, from benefits to market wages, and all of the equity balance that we have to provide across funds. So I'm very appreciative to all of their efforts, and I believe there's something Mr. Pedrosa wants to. Oh, Mr. Martinez, I gave you a new name. I'm sorry. And did I get Ms. Garcia Pedrosa right?
Also, Mr. Kehoe, can you just briefly mention the underlying foundation of this is the Douglas Vision for 2032?
Yes, so the Douglas Vision for 2032 came as a result of the announcement of over $400 million in late 2021 when I first had taken my new role as city manager from the federal government to construct the commercial port of entry. One of my first tasks was to gather mayor and council in a retreat setting to say, we have this future. It's now more tangible than we've ever seen before. What are the current mayor and council's policy priorities? So we went through a full process to narrow down to 6 policy priorities. Those are listed in your memorandum. We've been working on infrastructure, downtown revitalization, facilities, tourism, combined with facilities, and streets and roads has been the one area that we've not quite taken as big a bite as I think we need. When one of the things that we do know in, I'm going to say 2019 timeframe, the city was able to conduct a street study. And that determined that there was an excess of $67 million in need of our streets and roads. And when we're able to apply from our HER fund only 700,000, that it's just barely inching along. So with new equipment, I mean, we're not going to get to $67 million immediately, but we will be able to manage and prioritize. Very, very proud of our engineering team and our staff through the use of college interns have been able to put together a rating structure, if you will, of all of the conditions of our streets and roads. And that's what we follow in terms of who goes next. And it's not always as methodical as that, but at least we have a really good system to follow on that type of policy. So that's what the 6 policy priorities are. We engage that to be Douglas Vision 2032. It's a 10-year plan to try and align with the final commercial port of entry and what we hope that brings to the community. Annexations is part of that as well. Even though the project is slated to be completed in 2028, 2032 helps us complete some of the areas and follow along and align with what we believe the vision will align to as well.
Thank you. One more question is, will these documents be available to the public either through our website or physically? If they wanted a copy?
Mayor, yes, these documents are already provided as part of today's agenda packet, both my memorandum and the PowerPoint presentation.
Thank you. So, Jim, we see everything. Mr. Brick?
Hi, a quick question. So at our June 4th meeting, that's when the finance committee will go over the recommendations you guys have made and decide to potentially make different recommendations to the council. Will we be able to recommend any of this be amended?
Yes, you can recommend all you want. I laughed when I said that, but in all honesty, that's why the finance committee exists, so that we can get that input and feedback.
Will the fire chief and police chief be present there? Because I am looking at some of these not recommended for approval. Yes, I would like to know kind of from them, those things that are recommended, if they feel it necessary, and see if we can work that in. It does look like they don't have their requested stuff approved, whereas some other departments have close to 80% in parks and swimming approved. I can either ask now, or if they're gonna be there, I'll just wait for that.
Well, you haven't worked very long with fire and police requests.
Yes, they are available now and can certainly answer that as well. If you'd rather take care of those questions now, that's perfectly acceptable as well.
Well, so on some of the things that we're seeing that did not get recommended for approval, I don't know if we guys have access to that package particularly, or are there any of those that you, in your opinion, really feel we need to reconsider?
Would you like a copy of the list?
Go off the cuff if that's okay. Mr. Mayor, members of the council and Mr. Chair and members of the finance committee. We did have several discussions on the capital requests on the PD side, and some of the items that were not approved for funding are being considered under some congressional funding. But we won't know the answers to whether that funding's awarded or not until later on in the year. So we prioritized our equipment needs basically on officer safety. So that's why our vests and plate vests and things like that were funded, whereas some of the other equipment can wait. Fortunately, we did get approval to get a couple of vehicles that were not budgeted for or planned for this fiscal year, but the opportunity presented itself, and thanks to Ms. Urquijo, we were able to get that approved. And we're also in the process of receiving some additional vehicles. So we're not hurting as bad as we had been in the past.
Were there any other things on that? So the 4 patrol vehicles, that's not as big a concern anymore, I guess, right? Like you're saying.
Because there was a consideration through the congressional funding that they may provide funding for additional vehicles.
Was there anything else that got denied that?
Can I take a peek here? So specific to the Intox 9000, that was one of the items that we did request funding for. We did apply for grant funding through the Governor's Office of Highway Safety to include that in their proposal. But again, we won't know if that's going to be funded until after the fiscal year starts. So that's usually around August, September timeframe. The MDC and tablets, again, that was part of the congressional funding proposal that we submitted, along with the training rifles and equipment. So a number of the things that we have listed here are all looped into that congressional funding proposal that we submitted. We've had support from a couple of the offices, so I think it's a silver lining, if you will, and the outlook is positive. It's just a question of how long it takes for that approval to finally get made. Because I know that in some of the other congressional considerations, it's taken a little bit of time frame to get that notification.
The positive thing is, my understanding is that it's still in the running. And when it's still in the running, that's positive. So it hasn't been eliminated. So that's a good thing.
And one more point that I'd like to make, Mr. Chair and Mr. Brake, is on the Intox that has a grant pending. What the chief may or may not know, I don't remember if he knows this, is that we're creating this year a capital reserve line item. And what we have some funding in there, and if that grant does not go through, that's among the top of the list to make sure he receives. So we have a backup plan for that, but because we have a grant, we're reconciling our capital this year to be more strategic in the overage we have sometimes. So say, for example, something is quoted at 150,000 and it only costs 149,000. That additional 1,000 goes into our miscellaneous pot. If it only costs 70,000, then the miscellaneous goes, the reserve goes in there. And we're able to then go back and reassess priorities based on those needs.
And just to clarify the question on the Intox 9000, that is an instrument that we use for DUI investigations. That's the instrument that you blow into to determine your blood alcohol concentration. So that's why it was requested, and we're not the only agency that uses it. Any agency within our areas is welcome to use it, but it is housed at our station. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Chief.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Chair, members of council and finance committee. Like Chief Fulton stated, there were many conversations, very honest and open conversations. And again, many. through the budget process, it was basically a process of elimination, going off of our priorities. So, to say that I absolutely need anything other than what is being, proposed or approved, I really can't, because I support what's being recommended. And through the conversations that we've had, we've basically agreed on these are what we can work with you on, and based on the priority list that you're providing, this is what is going to be presented. So, you know, I could go through each item that was requested that's not being approved and explain why I need it and what process we're projecting to obtain that piece of equipment or item. But that's already happened. So that's why we've basically come to the agreement. But of course, yes, they're all needs, they're all important needs, but they've been prioritized, and through the budget process, again, I support what's being recommended.
So are there anything like that? Like, I mean, are you kind of in the same boat as you for this funding process? You're out, this is coming through, or anything?
I,
But was it? I guess, cause I just wanna make sure we're going. We're at a time where the financial state of the city is very different than it once was. We do have some funds, but it's still tied up, and we want to hear that. If we can do something a little more, we can, this, once again, I know you guys requested a lot, but also, you know, a lot, not.
I understand, and I appreciate the question and your consideration. If you look at what's being approved for fire, for instance, there is a pretty big item there, which is our street. The street is in pretty bad, really needs repair. That's been on the list for many years. So we're very pleased to see that's on the recommended list. And the number two is, would be a building to house our equipment, which many of you have noticed throughout the years. A lot of our equipment sits outside because we don't have anywhere to put it. So aligning with sustainability and looking into the future, that really makes me feel better to know that we're going to be able to take care of our equipment. So that's why those two are the top two, actually. Thank you. I appreciate it, and can't speak for Chief Fulham, but I'm sure he agrees. We absolutely feel supported. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Yes, please, Mr. Pedrosa.
If I could go back to Mrs. Morales' question about the rates.
Please.
So in February, we will be increasing 3.5% on the base rate for water. And as an example, what that 3.5% would do is currently the base rate for a typical single family home is $11.31. At 3.5%, it will go to $11.70. On the consumption side of things, the rate will change from 98 cents per 1,000 gallons consumed to $1.07 per 1,000 gallons. So that's an 8.5% increase on the consumption side. And I'll give you just an example. On average, 8,000 gallons a month represents about $8.54 for the water bill.
Thank you, Mr. Pedrosa. Welcome. Anyone else?
Mayor,
Yes, please, Mr. Montaño.
I agree with Mr. Drake. I think we're looking at the numbers right now. We're in a not that bad of a situation where I think
that some of these things, especially, I'm a big supporter of EMS and fire, they're the ones that take care of this. So if there's something that they requested, I think it should be looked at again because of our balance. I think maybe it takes it's gonna take another conversation with them for them to actually say, this is what we need, this is what we need this for, and then decide. I know they had a conversation with city staff, but I think it should be now saying, hey, what do you really need? Not like, you have so much money, what do you want? Instead of what do you need should come first before the money part based on our numbers. That's just my 2 cents.
Thank you, Mr. Montaño. Anyone else? Thank you, staff, for making a very efficient, proposal. You guys are good. Very concise and very, but I also want to say that if you do have any questions, if you, like Mr. Lindeman, get woken up at 3 o'clock in the morning and say, what about that? Please ask, because we want to provide that information and make sure that everybody in this room and also everybody in the community has whatever information they have on need or want regarding this budget. But again, thank you, staff. Looks like a very strong budget, and I appreciate the process in that. We'll move on to item number 8, adjournment. We have a motion to adjourn.
Yeah.
In fact, you know what? Hold on 1 second. We'll let the finance committee adjourn first, and so that I can bang my little gavel at the end. And Mr. Lindeman, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Before I ask for a motion to adjourn, I did want to thank the mayor for reappointing me to this position. I enjoy serving our community and public servants, and I thank Mr. Brake and Mr. Guadalupe for putting in their time on this and others on the finance committee also. So with that, thank you, staff. May I have a motion to adjourn the finance committee? Is there a second? All in favor? Aye.
Thank you. We have a motion to adjourn our joint city council finance committee special meeting. Ms. Morales,
And to adjourn our special city meeting.
is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Ms. Morales, second by Mr. Shelton to adjourn. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed by nay? The ayes have it. We stand adjourned at whatever time. 6:54.
Have a good evening, team.
Thank you.